All right, good morning, everyone. That was an enthusiastic good morning from everyone. Thank you. I'd like to call the joint hearing of the Accountability and Administrative Review and Privacy and Consumer Protections Committee to order. It is 10:05 by my clock. Thank you, Chairman Chow, for joining us and being with us this morning. As many of you guys know, this is a continuation hearing, our yearly hearing that we've had, I believe, when Mr. Frazier was chair. He started the first one almost 3 years ago now. This is our third one. So, just in an opening statement, I'd like to say the way CalCloud has progressed, I think, is a positive thing. And moving together, and I appreciate the director's willingness to work with the committee. I know we've exchanged letters back and forth. Actually, I believe Mr. Frazier might have even started the first letter asking certain questions, follow up when I was chair, and now to our hearing now. With that, I know that there's still more work to be done, and I'm sure there's other individuals in this room that are eager to learn about how we progress, how this functions with each of the different state departments as we continue to move forward. With that, let me go ahead and just turn it over to see if Chairman Chow has any opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Chairman Salas. I want to start by thanking you for inviting the Privacy and Consumer Protection Committee to co-host this hearing. As the work of the Department of Technology is of great interest to both of our committees. And I welcome the opportunity to hear from CDT about the progress that it has made over the last year since our last CalCloud oversight hearing. In particular, I'd like to hear more about the cost savings that CDT has achieved so far. Also the satisfaction level from the various agencies that have started using CalCloud, the CDT's targets and goals for bringing other agencies into CalCloud in upcoming months and years. And I also like to learn a little bit more about cybersecurity and privacy aspects in connection with CalCloud, because CalCloud may in fact be the centralized location that holds the personal information of nearly 39 million Californians. With the full understanding that the focus of today's hearing is procurement, yet I believe that would be helpful for us to understand how the migration to CalCloud might help improve our state agency security posture. So with that, I want to thank all the presenters for being here today, and I want to turn it back over to Chairman Salas.
Thank you. Opening remarks from anyone else on the committee? Okay, well, thank you. With that, let's go ahead and call up our first panel. Director of Department of Technology, Carlos Ramos, and our Chief Deputy Director of Operations, Chris Cruz. And Mr. Ramos, I do believe you have someone with you if you'd like to introduce them as well. Sure. I will say, as you guys are getting settled, one of the things that we had stressed during our last hearing was making sure that we develop technology-neutral solutions. And as we start with the IASS and moving those systems forward. So, Mr. Ramos, if you'd like to introduce your guests,
yes,
please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and Mr. Chairs and members. Thank you for the invitation to be back with you. I do have with me a couple of folks, our Chief Deputy Director over Operations and Services, Chris Cruz, and we have a guest here, Francoise Lee. I had mentioned to you that we have an executive development program for IT leaders in the state. So we're trying to prepare our next generation of leaders. It's a nine-month-long program that they have to do in addition to their regular job. So it's a lot of work. They have to take on special projects. They go through classes to try and shortcut their learning curve. One of the activities they get to do is they shadow an executive for a day. And so Francoise is shadowing me today. So thank you for allowing me to bring her up.
Fantastic.
Maybe I could ask her to introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Francoise Lee, and I'm with the Office of Systems Integrations, and it's been an honor for me to be here today.
Thank you for joining us this morning.
Okay.
So, to your other side, you have Mr. Cruz, who's every TechWire article I read about CalCloud, you seem to be the star in it. So thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Chairman Salas. Thank you, Chairman Chow.
So, and I thought it was important to bring Chris with me. As you're aware, our organization, the Department of Technology, is divided really into two general functions. A control and oversight agency, which is our policy side. That's headed up by our Chief Deputy Director, Andrea Wallen-Roman. And then we have our services and operations side, right? The side of the organization that actually offers technology services to customer agencies, public sector customer agencies. Chris oversees that half of the department. And so our cloud service offerings fall under his jurisdiction. So I had a chance to look at the background document, which I think does a really nice job of explaining what CalCloud is and what our services portfolio is, and a little bit of our background. So I thought what I would do in my opening comments is really try to address some of the questions that I think may be of interest to the committee, including the ones Chairman Chow had asked.
And members, that's under tab 1 in your packets.
So starting with what has changed since last year, there are a number of very positive changes that have happened in our CalCloud service catalog and our service offerings. One of the most important ones is that we have lower rates, especially in our infrastructure as a service offerings. We were able to renegotiate our contract with our provider, the company that's helping us develop and implement the system on-site and on-premise. So we achieved a 45% reduction in rates there on average, 45%. The other thing that came along with those rates, though, is additional services, both in our infrastructure as a service. We can get into some more of the details as we go in.
Please.
More additional services that are available to our customers. A stratification of services so that customers have a little bit more of a cafeteria-style approach where they can buy the level of services that they want, either a full service where we manage things for them, or the opportunity to host stuff in the cloud where they still maintain some of those management responsibilities. We've also matured and enhanced our security offerings in our cloud offerings. So I can talk a little bit about that in more detail. And all of that has led to greater adoption. So, we're very pleased to see the adoption of our cloud services among the state agencies. I think we have close to 50 different state agencies now using our cloud services, many of them using more than one service. So we have some of the very biggest and most visible agencies. So the Department of Motor Vehicles, the Controller's Office, Employment Development Department, Board of Equalization, really some of the big mature organizations are starting to leverage our services. So we're very pleased to see that. And, with lower prices, with better security, with more services available to them, you can see that would happen and it's starting to happen. The other thing that we're also seeing is local government is taking quite an interest in leveraging our services now as well. We have a couple more prospective customers in the local government space that are very interested in the services that we're offering. And then one thing that that's kind of a side benefit that we have seen as well is we're starting to see changes in the technology industry, in the provider industry. We're seeing companies out there moving towards a cloud service model as well, and more of them willing to come in and play in our cloud catalog. We think that that's a really positive move. A couple of other things that I'd like to cover. In terms of what have we learned over the last year, and again, we can go into detail in any of these areas as you like. Here's a couple of very important lessons that we've learned. One is that government agencies like the idea of a government-owned and government-only cloud environment. They have less worries about how are they going to transition if they go out to the commercial sector and go out to bid and one company wins at one time and go out to bid and somebody else wins a different time. They like the idea of a government-owned and government-only sort of a cloud offering. There's less worry about who else is sharing the environment with them, right? Whereas if you go to the commercial cloud, you really don't know who else is sharing the environment. There are also a lot of concern about who gets to touch and access their data, who has it, right? If you do transition or if you end a cloud engagement, are they going to get their data back, or who has access to it? So that was a little bit eye-opening to us. Cost is certainly an issue and a concern. Part of the reason why we negotiated lower rates, but it's not the most important thing. And in fact, I would say in many cases it's not even the overarching consideration for the different agencies that are signing up. We also found that there's a need for transition planning. So it's not as easy as saying, okay, we're going to get into cloud, so move everything into the cloud. Agencies, especially at the state level, and I think at local government levels too, oftentimes their systems are interconnected and interlaced. And so there has to be a good deal of transition planning as you move into the cloud. When we developed our cloud offerings, we initially developed them with the vision that this would be for bringing on new systems. So if you're bringing a new system from scratch and building it, it's pretty easy to build it in that environment. What we're surprised, though, is that there's a lot of interest in transitioning existing systems into the cloud. And so that does require a bit of planning, migration planning, assessment of, okay, how's it going to work? What data is in there? What other systems does it connect to? Are we going to have to build connectivity and interfaces to other systems at the state level? I think when you hear from some of our customers in the next panel, they may be able to address or talk to you about some of that. The other thing that we found is that departments, even though it was a good offering, though it was a cheaper alternative, though it was something that was relatively convenient to access, weren't going to jump just to jump. They're making their decisions to transition, especially existing systems, at sensible transition points or inflection points. Typically, what we're seeing is at the end of when it's time to refresh the technology, folks buy technology and refresh it on a 3 to 5 year cycle. So when they weren't necessarily, if they just bought a bunch of hardware and software, they weren't that interested in saying, okay, well, we'll put all of that aside and move right into the cloud. They'll say, okay, we'll move, but let's, after we've finished out our term with this, the technology they've already bought. Other times have been also at the end of contracts. When they have contracts, oftentimes with contractors that build and develop and manage and sometimes host their systems, they're looking at those points and saying, well, it's the end of the contract anyway. Rather than go out to procurement and try and start this whole process over, we'll just move them over at that time. We also found that departments need to get comfortable with the idea of cloud computing, and so what we're seeing is departments kind of getting their feet wet before jumping in into the deep end. So what we're seeing is departments come in, try it out, make sure that they're comfortable with it, and to manage the transition and the change that it means to their own operations. We've learned that state employees can get pretty excited about it, including in our own operations staff. In honesty, folks had some trepidation at first. Many folks saw it as, oh, so we're outsourcing, state workload to, contractors. And as they've gotten more involved in it and starting to help agencies transition, and as we're moving towards transitioning maintenance of our system back to state employees, they're getting pretty excited and pretty pleased with it. They're starting to see that they can get involved in a level of operations that maybe is of a higher value to our customers. Having said that, though, we've also found that change is hard. It's hard not only for departments, because in many cases, taking technology that's sitting in your own office or in your own building and on your own raised floor space that you can go and see and touch, and then putting it at OTAC, where you don't necessarily see it every day, is a little bit difficult for folks. It's a change, right? So that's a little bit. It takes some transition. It's change for employees. For the operational staff, a lot of times there is fear of, okay, well, if I'm not patching the servers, what am I going to be doing, right? If somebody else is patching it, what am I going to be doing? And so again, they're finding that frees them up to do some other higher value activities for their agencies. And then it's also been a bit of a change for vendors. There are vendors that are working with us now that had different business models that didn't quite work well with the cloud sort of a service situation, right? One of the tenets of cloud computing is we don't pay up front like we do when we go out and buy a bunch of hardware and software. We pay for what we use at the time that we use it. And when we're done, when we decommission it, we stop paying. That was a different business model. I'm pleased to see that just in the industry as a whole, more and more companies are transitioning to a cloud model of service delivery or technology delivery. And that's enabling companies to come in and work with us. So we learned that change, is something that's a little bit of a challenge, and it takes a little bit of time. And then finally, what we've also learned, and especially in our vendor-hosted subscription services, it's really good to have a sponsor for that. So, we have a catalog of services that we've offered, and, departments are using them. There are a couple that are on the way where we have specific agencies that are really interested in sponsoring it. An example that would be digital signatures. It's one that a lot of different agencies want. It's something that our customers have come back and asked us for. But it's really good to have somebody driving it that's saying, you know what, we have the authority in the state around digital signatures. We want to set a standard. We want to make it clear that, because that policy or that authority doesn't reside with us. It resides with Secretary of State. They want to establish a policy that says, hey, it's okay, departments, to use digital signatures. So then that makes it easier for us to offer it up as a service and for agencies to come in and adopt it.
Got it.
So we found having those sorts of sponsors, same case in our human resources sorts of tool sets that we're looking at. Having an agency that says, hey, we're really interested in this, we want to sponsor this, really has helped. A couple of other quick questions, and then I'll stop so we can get to any questions you may have. Are we getting good value? Is the state getting good value from its investments in cloud technologies? I would say we are. We're benefiting from volume pricing. When you're able to negotiate an enterprise contract versus individual agencies having to negotiate contracts for themselves, we're getting market rates. We're paying, we switched to a model where we pay for what we consume instead of our traditional model, which is go out and buy a bunch of hardware and software and use about that much of it. And, you can understand departments need to do that because they have to buy and prepare for their peak workloads. But most of the time they don't use all that much. So when you're sharing computing resources in this cloud environment, you pay only for what you consume. When you don't need it, you decommission it, you stop paying. So that's a good value for the state. The other thing that this enables is it enables smaller departments to get into the market, right, where they can get the benefit of volume pricing, where they can get the benefit of a broader services portfolio. And it's, for departments as well, it's an easier route to procurement and acquisition of services. Now they come to us, they submit a service request. In the past, they would have had to do their own individual procurement or wait for one of the leveraged procurement vehicles that the state has. A couple of other areas that I'll go into just real quickly, and then I'll stop. In terms of benefits to the state as a whole, what we're seeing is reduced risk. Especially as folks are now able to sign up for software packages that are already developed in the marketplace, very mature, and they're able to get in at a low cost versus the traditional go out and build it, design it on your own, and wait 5 years to try and roll it out. Secondly, more efficient procurement. We're benefiting from standard terms and conditions in all of our procurements. In our contracts with cloud providers, that especially helps in the security front, data security and information protection, faster time to market, some degree of standardization as agencies start to use common tool sets. What that does is it takes into account that folks in state government transition and move from department to department. It's not like you're having to learn a new timekeeping system now if you go from one department to a different department, because we're going to start to standardize on standard tool sets. I'll go quickly now because I know. In terms of what the future looks like for cloud services, we see more cloud services being added to the catalog. I mentioned a couple: e-signatures, timesheets, disaster recovery and backup tools. We're at the part in our contract with our provider where we're going to start to transition operation and maintenance of the application in our environment to state employees. So we're going to get trained, and we're going to get a skilled crop of employees that are able to support and manage a cloud environment. That's going to be very good for us as a state. We're seeing other state and local governments not only come to us and starting to try and access our services, but many of them are starting to follow our examples. I've had folks reach out to me from the city of Seattle, from other states across the country saying, hey, how did you do that? We want to try and do this. For our own cloud environment, we're in the process of asking the feds to certify us for FedRAMP certification. We're the first state in the nation to do that. And I think, it's a process. We're in the process of doing that. We've submitted our application. But I think that'll help from a cybersecurity perspective as well. And we're seeing more tech providers switching to cloud services and the cloud services model. Just a quick word on cybersecurity, since you asked, Mr. Chow. So So, as I mentioned, we've matured the offerings there. So, from an infrastructure as a services, that part of our cloud offering, it adheres to pretty well recognized national cybersecurity standards, including starting with our own policies and standards that we set for California, with HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, with requirements of the Social Security Administration, with FIPS, which is the Federal Information Processing Standards, with the IRS 1075 standards, with the Payment Card Industry PCI standards, with NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's, as I mentioned, we've submitted an application for certification through FedRAMP. We're CGIS compliant, FISMA, and 2 or 3 other ones, ANSI and ISO 27002. We have a number of, we've taken sort of a layered approach to information security, which includes not only building the system to standards and making sure that our offerings from our vendor-hosted subscription services conform to those standards, but investment in a number of different technologies. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because it's probably not wise to do that, but includes such tools as firewalls, incident and event management, continuous vulnerability scanning, other physical safeguards, network intrusion detection, and other host-based intrusion detection systems. So what I see is down the road, I think we're going to see more and more agencies starting to move into cloud computing, and specifically leveraging the services portfolio that we've developed at Caltech. So with that, I'll stop and open us to any questions.
Okay. Well, let me just first start just by asking a threshold question, which is, how many departments do we currently have utilizing CalCloud?
We have, I believe, 50 or 48.
60.
Oh, 60.
62?
We have 28 total on infrastructure as a service, and we have another 32 total using vendor-hosted solutions, and that number is growing every day. So usually right now what we're doing is getting service requests in on a weekly basis for 2 to 3 additional departments to sign up for services, either through infrastructure as a service or through our vendor-hosted subscription services. So adoption is rising.
And what are some of the bigger departments that are utilizing it? I know, like CDCR, who's here.
So let me go through a couple of them here. So we have the bigger ones: Board of Equalization, the Covered California, the Health Benefit Exchange, the Public Utilities Commission, the Department of Child Support Services. We're really close to getting them on board. You'll hear from the Department of Corrections, Department of Healthcare Services, Department of Motor Vehicles, Department of Public Health, Department of Rehab, Department of Social Services, Employment Development Department, the Cal EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, Fiscal, which is our statewide financial management system that's being developed. Their procurement portal is hosted on our cloud environment. Office of Systems Integration, the Secretary of State, and the State Controllers. Those are some of the bigger ones.
Got it. So I would imagine that all the services that we tied in for the privacy aspect for Mr. Chow, HIPAA, right? What did you say?
CGIS,
PCI,
FedRAMP, IRS 1075.
Okay. Has there been any issues with that? I mean, so far,
the only issue we've had, which is a kind of a good one, is the feds weren't sure how to deal with us. We're the first state ever to ask for FedRAMP certification, so they're like, well, we don't normally do this. So, but nothing in terms of any intrusions or successful attempts or anything. A lot of attempts, but nothing successful.
Got it. And the departments that you said more are coming on every month. Right. So is there a target that you guys have developed or that you have infrastructure for our staff?
Yeah, do you want to go through that?
As you build out, I mean, what are we looking at in the next couple of months? What are we looking at close of year? How do we see this progressing?
So one of the things, Mr. Chairman, we've looked at is developing an adoption strategy, and that adoption strategy lays to the fundamental components that you're speaking to in terms of how do we allocate the necessary staff. Today we have 10 staff that really are overseeing CalCloud from a state perspective. So it's a public-private partnership in terms of working with IBM on that. As to Carlos's point, we anticipate bringing more staff into CalCloud as demand rises. So what we're doing internally is we're looking to do institutional knowledge training with our staff to move them over into the cloud to learn new tools tools. So as more folks drive demand and services, we have the applicable resources, we have the applicable processes in place to ensure that that technology is implemented successfully.
Can you talk about some of the potential customers that are coming?
Right. So, and potential customers that we're working with now in terms of that area, so these are large customer application systems that we're now migrating into CalCloud. So we're working with Board of Equalization, bringing their organization and some of their systems into play. Department of Child Support Services, as Mr. Ramos mentioned, that's 139 services. That's their child welfare and support system. And these are key systems that are coming into the application, and I think it speaks to the security safeguards that we have in place, that the applicability to manage and handle data integrity from that perspective, and to ensure that we can manage that service in an environment that takes, less computing power and is more efficient from a technological perspective. Also, as Director Ramos mentioned, Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, which you'll hear from on their business information system. We have the Department of Education currently with their 2 nutritional-based systems that they're looking on onboarding. Department of Transportation, we're currently doing an assessment and migration with to determine their landscape and inventory of applications that may be a good fit for CalCloud infrastructure as a service. And then Department of Motor Vehicles as well, doing the same thing, that we're assessing their current environment to see if there's good fits for more of their application systems to come over from their physical and virtual environment on-prem to CalCloud. And then finally, Office of System Integration with their case management, information and payrolling system that they manage on behalf of the Department of Social Services. We're looking at doing an assessment on. So those are the areas within the systems that we have that we're transitioning, that we have in the pipeline now that we'll be working on. Yeah.
And it seems like each of the different departments utilize different aspects of the CalCloud.
Right.
From fiscal to, you mentioned digital signatures and timekeeping. I mean, is there a growth in one of those individual areas that we're seeing that could be applied?
That's a really good question. Let me talk about that. I did want to mention a couple of other potential customers that we're working with. The University of California Office of the President is really interested, so we're in discussions and negotiations with them. And then several local governments as well that are interested in moving stuff. And we've actually had inquiries from other states too. We're not sure if we're going to accommodate other states, but at least in California, public sector entities can come in.
Absolutely. What about, we have the chairwoman of Veterans Affairs, and she had some pointed questions not too long ago. Maybe we could try to get the security concerns, Veterans Affairs, maybe we could try to get them kind of looped in. Yeah. Please continue.
So in terms of future plans, so one of the things that we've been doing is trying to stay in pretty close communication with our customers to understand, okay, what are the services that you're interested in? What would you like to see us add into the portfolio? So we've gone out and engaged with them through surveys and then through asking them. And essentially what we did is we said, okay, give us your top 10 or 20 services that you would want to see in our portfolio. And we got pretty good response from them. Then what we did is we looked for where were there areas of commonality. And so we ended up with the top 5, list of offerings of things that they wanted. I mentioned already e-signatures is at the top, office productivity tools, learning management systems. So, so you can track when people go through training classes and what certifications they get. People in state government oftentimes have requirements for continuing education. So, what's that?
Collaboration.
Oh, collaboration tools as well, and then HR management tools. So as we're getting the list from our customers, we're saying, okay, well, we'll go out and get those and offer them as an enterprise offering through the cloud. So those are the areas that we see in terms of future growth or future services being added. What we're going to do is, we're going to take them in chunks of 5 at a time. We'll go out, we'll procure them, we'll bring them in, we'll add them into the services portfolio, and then we're going to go back out and say, okay, what else are you looking for? And our goal is to bring in the services that have a common set of customers. If they're one-offs, then it doesn't really make sense to offer it as an enterprise offering. That agency can go out and get it on their own.
And I think we're trying to move away from that model, right, with CalCloud. So.
Well, I mean, we would still want them to get them through in the form of cloud services, but it doesn't make sense for us, who's an offerer of enterprise technology services, to offer a service or get a bidder to come in and bid and have only a single department sign up for it. We want services that are going to have multiple departments, and actually the vendors would too. They want to make sure that that there's going to be a market and that there's going to be an uptake and adoption.
Yeah. well, if it could apply across multiple departments and it's a service that can be utilized.
Sure.
Now, as we're talking about this too, you had mentioned earlier migration.